And now yet another entry into the hidden history of the African American warrior. In this part of the world, descendants of runaway slaves and Seminole Indians, many black Seminoles who fought against the U.S. Army in the Second Seminole War between 1835 and 1842. By the end of that conflict, most of them were captured or removed to Indian Territory. The fear of enslavement, however, drove many of the black Seminoles to migrate to Mexico in the 1850s. In Mexico was the family of a man named Pompey Factor. Factor was a scout for the U.S. Army, coincidentally, during the Indian Wars. He was involved in a conflict during the Red River War. This was a battle between U.S. forces, the Comanche and the Kiowa native tribes. Factor was born in Arkansas to his father, who was a black Seminole chief named Hardy Factor, and an Indian scout, his mother, whose name is still unknown, but what is known is that she was a Biloxi Indian. This part of the world, a city, shares the name of that great tribe along with the river. Factor was a descendant of the runaway slaves and those Seminole Indians. He and other black Seminoles stayed in Mexico up until 1870. And that's when the U.S. Army started recruiting those black Seminoles to serve. They had taken note of the battles that were waged in the Second Seminole War, going up until 1842. So the U.S. Army comes a-calling down to Factor and other black Seminoles who were down in Mexico. This is 1870. He and another man were the first to accept the offer and return to U.S. Promised land for their families and relocated them to a reservation, of course, in Texas, or near Texas, near Brackettville, Texas. At Fort Clark there was a reservation set up. Factor had enlisted and was assigned to the rank of private with a detachment of Seminole Negro Indian Scouts and the 24th Infantry. Factor was then involved again in 1875 in this battle, the Red River War battle. The U.S. squared off against Comanche and Kiowa forces. This is what was on the citation for Factor. Factor, Sergeant John Ward, and Trumpeter Isaac Payne, along with their commander, Lieutenant John L. Bullis, came upon the trail of a herd of 75 horses they suspected had been taken from white settlers. They followed the tracks to the Eagle's Nest crossing just east of present-day Langtree, Texas, where they spotted the horses and 25 to 30 Comanche. Factor and his companions took cover within 75 yards of the Comanche and opened fire. They killed 3 warriors immediately and wounded another twice. They took the herd, but both times they had to retreat and take cover. So they had obtained the herd, were moving back to their forces 2 times over and had to do it all over again. The scouts then realized that they were about to be encircled by the Comanche, which would make them unable to get their own horses and get out. So they retreated to their horses and started to ride away. Then Sergeant Ward notices that Lieutenant Bullis isn't able to mount his horse. The horse is spooked, neighing. When a horse is spooked, it rears. It won't let you get on its back. So at this point, Bullis, the lieutenant, is nearly surrounded by Comanche troops. The warriors are closing in. He alerts Factor and Payne, and they turn around to rescue the commander under heavy fire. They ride back for him. Ward then pulls Bullis onto his horse while he and Payne provided cover. The scouts then were able to ride on to safety. For his efforts, Pompey Factor, descendant of the great black Seminoles and the Biloxi Indian, and his fellow scouts, received the Congressional Medal of Honor May 28, 1875 for their bravery exhibited at Eagle's Nest Crossing and the rescue of their commander there, Lieutenant Bullis. So there you have it, folks. Pompey Factor, one of the one of the descendants of the runaway slaves and Seminole Indians, and the Biloxi Indian. Here he is in his later years, Mr. Factor. So there you have it. Just another example of how African Americans contributed to literally every single war waged in this country, whether it be with the natives of this country or foreign forces. The African American warrior is always on hand. So the government's reopened. The Trump shutdown is over. The president went ahead and signed the bill that would reopen the government for 3 months. It's better than not at all, right? It's better than closed. Federal workers are going back to work today. Jeff Sessions is now going to be, or was rather, questioned last week about the Russia investigation, according to a source. He, along with others, are still providing testimony. The investigation goes on. Don't let distractions keep you from paying attention to exactly what's happening here, folks. The Russia investigation is still happening. It's not gone anywhere, despite distractions thrown in your way. And the way that this thing went with the shutdown, I'm starting to kind of see a little bit of a distraction. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that this is orchestrated by the president himself to distract, but the way that he was very silent over the weekend is an indication of maneuvering here. At least he would have you think he maneuvered to get this thing done. Of course, he's already taken to Twitter to take credit, give credit along to the Republicans, saying that the Dems got basically rolled in this situation. They got a promise. No, they didn't get a promise. Excuse me. They got we'll talk about it. No handshake, no guarantees to take up the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals Act, which the president has set to expire in March.
Wasn't that what this was all about?
Well, it was part of it. A good bit of it. But there was a lot of attention that was put on that to kind of obscure exactly what was happening. You see, the Republicans and Democrats before all this had a deal twice. Brought it to the president. The president initially wanted X, Y, and Z, money for the wall, money for troops. Democrats and Republicans come to an accord, bring it to the president 2 times. He says no. Throws him back to the drawing board. His own party's leader, Mitch McConnell, lamented that he didn't know what the president wanted, so they could give it to him. But it was, again, all an effort to attempt to show the weakness of the Democrats. And I think this time, along with several times others, it's worked. Because all that Schumer did, basically, was accept we'll talk about it. No handshake, no promise. Just an assurance, we'll definitely talk about it. But no hard, fast plans on what to do with these folks who are dreamers, who are here. Well, yeah, 3 weeks later. And this goes up to what, February 8th. So we'll be here once again, and then in March. Well, hopefully the president is stating again that he'll be at the negotiating table, even though he was kind of absent from these negotiations. But of course we have to take his word for it that he'll be at the negotiating table when Republicans and Democrats go for a deal on DACA by February 8th. He stated on his Twitter, just this morning, that nobody knows for sure if Republicans and Democrats are able to reach a deal, but everyone will be trying. Yeah, right. If you believe that, I don't know. But the shutdown is now over. The Trump shutdown is not over. It is now over. And I think that if Schumer did say anything correctly, it was that, at least, coining this the Trump shutdown. Because from a position of leadership, and you heard the president say it himself, he was responsible for at least those few days of folks being out of work, being furloughed, not being paid, or the looming threat of them not being paid. That falls on him, by his own words now. This is not one of those instances where we think or have to construe what he might have been thinking or said. No, he said it plainly back in 2013 when another individual was president, that the buck stops with him basically when it comes to a government shutdown.
Well, I mean, who gets solved? It always has to be the top, and these problems start from the top, and they have to get solved from the top, and the president's the leader, and he's got to get everybody in a room, and he's got to lead it. You know, the interesting thing is in 25 years and 50 years and 100 years from now, when the government, when they talk about the government shutdown, they're going to be talking about the President of the United States. Who was the president at that time? They're not going to be talking who the head of the House was, the head of the Senate, who's running things in Washington. So I really think the pressure is on the president.
So the president was to blame for that shutdown. That Trump shutdown was on him. Well, no, he'll give credit. Well, it's the Democrats' fault that, well, things change when you become president. Your perspective is different. Your point of view shifts. Breaking news here, folks, coming out of Benton, Kentucky. We're getting reports now that a shooting did take place this morning at Marshall High School in Benton. That's according to City Clerk Beth Cooper. All officers at the Benton Police Department office who were inside City Hall left to go to the scene of the school. There have been injuries reported, according to Kentucky State Police. Again, this is breaking news. At least one individual, however, is reported to have been killed in this high school shooting, and that's according to the governor. In a tweet, Governor Matt Bevin just wrote, "Tragic shooting at Marshall County High School. Shooter is in custody. One confirmed fatality. Multiple others wounded, much yet unknown. Please do not speculate or spread hearsay. Let's let the first responders do their job and be grateful that they are there to do it for us." That's the tweet. Just received a little less than 30 minutes ago from Governor Matt Bevin in Kentucky. Again, at least one person was killed during a shooting at Marshall County High School. Multiple others were wounded, however. Marshall County High School is in Benton, Kentucky. Officers with the Benton Police Department were on the scene, according to the city clerk. That story is still developing, of course, and we will definitely keep you updated. Follow that for me for sure, with love. 82% of the wealth generated in 2017 went to the richest 1% of the global population. 4 out of every $5 of wealth generated in 2017 ended up in the pocket of the richest 1%, while the poorest in the world got nothing. That's according to a new report released yesterday by Oxfam. The World Economic Forum annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland is going on this week. Oxfam reports highlights of the global system that rewards the super rich and neglects the poor, obviously. And, just an aside, though that's obvious, though that really can't be disputed at this point, whether it's right or wrong is inconsequential, okay? If you want to change that, you have to do something about it, besides, tweet or share something someone else created on Facebook. What I just read to you can hardly be disputed now. I mean, if you don't agree with that, I understand. But when we look at the numbers here, 4 out of every $5 generated ending up in folks who already have billions of dollars across the world.
All of the money in the world,
The vast majority. So the super rich is rewarded, the poor are neglected. You don't like that? Well, don't neglect the poor. Don't support the super rich. You have that ability. And if folks who are in office don't share your point of view, vote them out. Or run for office. Register folks to vote, get out, and guess what else? If that system doesn't work, like some people like to say, create a new system, right? Create a whole new system. But you will not change the system until you use the system already in place. Anyway, 3.7 billion people who make up the poorest half of the world saw absolutely no increase in their wealth last year. 82% of the wealth generated went to the richest 1% of the global population, according to Oxfam. The executive director, Winnie Byanyima, says that this report now reveals that the economies are rewarding wealth rather than the hard work of the millions who are poor. She blamed tax dodging as the major cause of the global inequality and urged leaders to clamp down on tax havens and plow money into education, healthcare, and jobs for young people. Tax dodging. Tax dodging is very important, especially when looking at the wealth in this country, in the super wealthy. And as the President of the United States likes to tout, how his friends like to go over to Africa to make their money. Now, hopefully we will be joined here from South Africa, Cape Town, as Rip is still in South Africa right now. But what's very interesting to note about this is that there's a serious issue now going on with the water supply. Thousands of folks are being affected now. A major coastal city is almost out of water. Cape Town is seemingly running out of water. That day is approaching quicker than anyone has predicted now. Breweries that normally bottle beer now switching to spring water. Private hotels rushing to bring in desalination plants online to clean the water that's already there. The coastal city, one of Africa's most popular tourist destinations, is grappling with the worst drought conditions it has ever faced in a century now. So that is something that this city is really having to rush to deal with, because they are, again, a tourist destination. Drought crises have been going on for over a century now. Dam levels have decreased 1.4% since last week alone, and according to new reports, city dams are now only 27% full. So this is a serious issue. Hopefully, when we're able to get back into Cape Town, we'll be able to hear from the ground about how this issue is affecting folks there. But that's really a terrible situation going on here. And the entire world is set to be affected by this, as water supplies from all over are being threatened, and only now are certain things really being paid attention to. To my folks listening online, we're about to do a maneuver here. I'm going to try to get Rip on from Cape Town. Whitlock, help me out with this. But keep listening and just stay tuned. We'll be right back online to Facebook Live here.